From the newsroom of the Bryant College Station Eagle, this is the Brazos Sports Prepscast. And now, the Eagle High School sports team, Alex Miller and Jake Weiss.
What's up, y'all? You're listening to another episode of the Brazos Sports Prepscast. I'm Alex Miller, joined always by Mr. Jake Weiss and Andrew Tenio. What's up, fellas?
Man, it's the big week, so it's finally here. It's kind of crazy to me that it's week 10 because I feel like we just started, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, the season has gone by really fast, and here we are. It's the biggest game in town of the year. A&M Consolidated, they're hosting College Station this week. We're going to be breaking down everything between the Tigers and Cougars. We'll have Scott Clendenin and Tap Bentz on the show here in a few, give us a little insight onto each side. This is going to be, well, you haven't been around for this one, have you?
No, I've not, but the weird thing is I've been around both teams the past 2 weeks in some form or fashion. I was at C-Stats game 2 weeks ago, and I was at Consols last week, so I have a pretty decent idea of where these two teams' directions are heading into Friday's contest. So,
you know, it's not the only game in town.
Yeah.
Bryan and Rudder, they're fighting for playoff spots. We'll talk about them too, and it happened. It happened. Franklin lost a football game. How will the Lions respond? We'll get into that here in a bit. But, hey, let's jump right into the action, fellas. Let's talk about that game Friday night at Tigerland Stadium. There's a lot of implications here, okay? College Station, they can wrap up a district title with a win. Consol can make it a three-way tie for first. College Station's blowout of Georgetown, though, I would think it probably locks down the number one seed, even if they lose, though. Because it gets down to the point differential, which we had to do some math on last year. Coach Pryor trying to score at the end of the game to go ahead by 14. But the reality for Consol is winning this game Friday night, that's the only way they can move up a seed line, because if they lose and they finish in a tie with Georgetown, of course, has the head-to-head win.
Yeah, they'd beat third.
So lots at stake. You don't necessarily want to be that number 3 team out of the playoffs. Jake, I'm going to start with you. What do you see as the biggest keys of the game in this one?
All right, so I've been thinking a lot about this, actually, since you came up with this question. I know it's only a little inside baseball. We're filming on a Tuesday, but you handed me this piece of paper on Monday, and that was the first thing I said to you was, ooh, biggest key. Like, I've been thinking about it ever since.
And what'd you come up with?
Yeah, I think I came up with a pretty good answer. We'll see, though. So, obviously, it's kind of the, immovable object versus the unstoppable force. Consol's defense, College Station's offense. That's probably the biggest one. But really, for me, I think those kind of guided my answer here. For Consol, I think the biggest key for them, don't have to run the triple option, but I think you really want to have long, sustainable drives on offense. You want to try to keep, and kind of twofold there. You want to keep College Station's offense off the field. We know they can put up points, but also you want to give your defense a break because they've got a tall task going up against that offense. And then for College Station, I've kind of thought about this. It's weird. Remember a couple weeks ago when Madisonville played Columbus?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that kind of stuck out to me there was talking with Coach Urbanki was kind of like, hey, we're going to have to take what they give us. And I kind of think for College Station, especially on offense, that's going to be the biggest key this week is, we've talked about, Andrew, you asked last week, hey, what have you guys seen from Consol's defense? They blitz real well. They take advantage of takeaways, turnovers. Heck, to me, I don't know about you guys, it seems like Consol's had, a turnover, at least one or two every game this season.
Yeah,
they make it happen.
Yeah, they
very
make
opportunistic.
So I think for College Station on the offensive side of the ball, the biggest key for them is kind of taking what they can get. They've been, a lot of home run balls, a lot of big plays this year. I think this week you might not get that, so I think you've really got to be patient. Maybe pick up 5 yards at a time. That's not as bad. Might not get 41-yard bombs, but maybe 5, 3, 4 yards. If you can just kind of move the ball, be patient, I think that's the biggest key for them.
Andrew, you were at Consol's game last week. The offense has started to turn the wheels a little bit. That was a question mark we had a lot throughout the first month of the season for them. What did maybe Coach Schmidt or some of their players have to say about some of the consistency that they're starting to find on that side of the ball?
I think it all starts up front. I think it's been the offensive line's progression over the past 3 weeks. It's gotten the quarterbacks comfortable. It's gotten the receivers comfortable knowing that their quarterbacks have more than a couple seconds to hold the ball. Gives the running backs confidence with the running lanes opening up. I think one of the biggest tests now for the Tigers is some health problem that they have because Peyton Bjork did not play last week, and Trey Taylor got hurt in the second quarter. The running back room's already kind of thin within itself with Cameron Vines. I don't know if he's going to play or not. So Dakota Johnson may have stepped up in a big way. Receivers may make some big plays, but the confidence of knowing your O-line can create those holes for not only the running backs but the quarterbacks to make plays. Hargett had 3 rushing touchdowns last week. I think those are going to be huge keys into knowing this. You can't turn this game into a track meet, but you need to have, like Jake said, long, sustainable drives. And I have a lot more confidence in Console doing that now than I probably did a month ago.
Could we see the return of Keyshawn Thomas to running back?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean,
It's a
he can
possibility.
play both ways.
Yep.
He can play slot receiver and running back.
I mean, he is a powder keg waiting to be ignited. So they're gonna have to find a way to get him the ball this week, without a doubt. He is a playmaker on that side of the ball for the Tigers. Jake, you and I are gonna be there Friday night. Looking forward to it. It's probably gonna be a sold out crowd.
Yeah, I was
it's gonna be a
say.
rowdy bunch.
I'll be going over there today. I'm going to be asking around, be like, hey, what are we looking like on tickets? I kind of want to know if it's sold out yet, because I think general admission doesn't go on sale till Wednesday. Is that right?
I think it's Wednesday.
Yeah, so
which is a good thing. You want to get the parents and the people that are most affiliated with the game a chance to get tickets first so they can go and watch their kids. But you got to think there might be a line lined up outside the field houses at each school tomorrow.
Yeah, I do not envy the ticket people for having to deal with that tomorrow, because I'm curious. I know we've seen at Kyle Field, the campsites. Don't know if we'll get that, but I am like, there's a part of me that's like, I wonder if anyone will,
if any students after school will just go by over the stadium and just sit there and wait for it.
Maybe. You could. I'll be looking around today, see if there's any tents or anything like that set up. Maybe some s'mores out.
Let us know what you find out. Well, hey, we got Scott Clendenin and Tap Bentz up next. Here it's what they had to say about this week's. Y'all joined now by Tap Bentz and Scott Clendenin. They're going to be on the call for Friday's game between A&M Consolidated and College Station over at Tigerland Stadium. Guys, thanks so much for coming in and giving us a little insight onto each side of the game this week.
Appreciate you having us.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think this is, the game the community circles, and it's great to have it back on the schedule for both teams. That's more important than really anything.
How many years was it? This is the second year we're back.
It was 4.
4 years that we didn't play.
Yeah, and that was 4 long years.
Yeah, I still wish, and again, I don't mean to go off topic too much. I wish we could figure out the Bryan schools so all 4 of us could be in one district and just not have to travel 2 hours every game.
No, that would definitely be a plus, because realignment coming up next year, we have no idea where we'll end
In
up.
about 3 months, huh?
Yeah.
Well, hey, I mean, if College Station keeps growing, if Bryan stayed at 6A, the 3 could be together again one day. But I don't think that's coming this next go around.
Not this go round, but you're right. I think it could be in probably 2 or 3 realignments.
Yeah, I think it's on the horizon. I think that's one of the reasons why I vote all 4. As I give a little plug for our local election.
Please vote yes for all 4 amendments.
It is about the future and those both schools being at the 6A attendance and athletic level.
Both and right, and again, I know you and I are kind of biased on the athletic side of it because we go visit other facilities and press boxes and realize that, and y'all's is a lot more updated than ours at Consol, but Consol's needs a little help.
Well, and hey, you can read all about all those things at theeagle.com because I wrote about it last week in Saturday's paper. Hey, there's a big game Friday night, though. College Station's trying to clinch a district title. Consol is trying to stay in the district championship hunt. I want to start with Consol because the Tigers, as much as they were trying to just figure things out the first month of the season, they've really got it rolling. I know they have not maybe played the best teams in the district, but you can't deny the fact that Consol has really had some convincing wins the last 3 weeks.
They have. And, again, I think if you looked at the schedule ahead of time, you probably would have penciled in a W for these last 3 games. But the way they've won these games has been pretty impressive. And again, it's they're still trying to figure out some things offensively, rotating the quarterbacks in a little bit and back. But that defense has just been so consistent throughout this season.
What is it about that defense that has really just stood out to you as the year has gone on, Tap?
Well, and again, I guess what stood out is just the difference than it was over the last 6 years, where they played that 4-3 kind of read and react defense and just, go off of that. This is a defense that's going to make you make a decision. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to come after you. And just the aggressiveness and physicality that they brought and the speed. I mean, their 2 defensive ends, I think, were wide receivers last year for Consol. So they have tremendous speed. I mean, Trace Meadows was the starting safety. Now he's a starting linebacker. So they have incredible speed, that's on from those 11 on defense.
Well, and that's what stood out to me because, I mean, last year's Consol front 7 was really strong and talented. That was definitely the strength of their defense, but they lost everyone almost. When you go on the defensive line, they lost Brock Sladen at linebacker. Coming into the year, I was like, what's Consol going to look like? And then you go out to a scrimmage against Bryan, and you're like, okay, maybe they got some guys that they're going to be able to do this. And Michael Clark and Genesis Radcliffe, they've been pretty solid this year.
They really have. And, some of the things that they've done, Mike was on the team last year. Genesis was on JV last year. And, that was one of the things when the season started. I looked and I go, okay, they have 34 seniors. But only 7 of them actually had varsity experience. This was a very JV-heavy team that's playing on this varsity level this year. And so it's just been teams learning and growing, the coaches figuring out what they could do. But again, I think that's what the mentality of being aggressive, coming after the offense, has made it simpler for this team. And sometimes, kids at 17, 18, it's easier. Hey, just go get the guy with the ball as opposed to sit here, make this read, do all these other things.
Well, Consol, their defense might have their best test yet because they're going to have to play College Station's offense that nobody's really been able to slow down. They put up 63 on Georgetown. I picked College Station to win. I don't know if I would have picked them to win by 42, though. To me, Scott, Arrington Maiden's growth this season has just been it's been pretty exceptional. We wrote about him last week in a feature. What have you seen from this College Station offense that has really allowed them to be just so consistent throughout the year?
Well, consistency, I think, goes back to health. They've been relatively healthy. Clayton Broad is the only offensive lineman who was an underclassman that moved in because of injury, got him his starting job, and he's come out because of injury. But they've been relatively healthy across the board in the offensive front, which always gives you a chance to have a good offense. And then Maiden and the receiving corps have a lot of familiarity between them. And then Aiden Martinez-Brown, he's back from the injury that he suffered against Lucas Lovejoy. But in the meantime, Wilson Staff and Cashin were able to give them something offensively. They're averaging 515 yards a game offense, 56 points a game. Even in their loss, they scored 37. And I went back and looked. Arrington Maiden has played 3 snaps in the fourth quarter this year. And those were the last 3 snaps of a scoring drive that he had against Lucas Lovejoy in the first game of the year. Everything else has been, out in the third quarter. And then Cade Corcoran has come in and been a very good backup quarterback. He's completing 77% of his passes. And they've been really basic because they're not trying to run up the score on some of these teams, but it's been very, very efficient. That overshadows the Cougar defense, which is really good, which has not played a lot of fourth quarter football as well. Some team, and I thought it might have been Georgetown last week, is going to make these guys play in the fourth quarter. That's going to be where the test is. Are you going to put pressure on the Cougars so they have to play a fourth quarter football game? Lucas Lovejoy is the only team that's done it. Since then, the Cougars have gotten a lot better, and I think that's why this matchup is so intriguing to me, the offense versus the defense. How deep will Consolidated run if the Cougars get it going? And then what will the Cougars defense do against Consolidated, whose offense is starting to find its legs and doing that through the ground, which not very many teams have been able to run at the Cougars this year either.
And it's interesting you talked about the fourth quarter because really the 2 losses that Consol has, Lufkin and Georgetown, the offense wasn't upholding their end of the bargain. I mean, they were 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. So that defense was on the field so much that by the fourth quarter, especially against Lufkin, they had nothing left, and Lufkin's size was able just to wear them down, and that's because they, Consolidated went in at halftime winning that ball game. So, it's just, but now that the offense is clicking a little bit, and you got to give the coaches credit for that, because Will Hargett was struggling a little bit, and I don't know if it was just the pressure he felt, maybe it was the new offense, but they kind of took him out, put in Tyler. Why am I getting Poling? God, I can't believe Tyler. Sorry about that. But Tyler Poling, and who's done a good steady job. He's you may not win a game because of Tyler, but you're never going to lose the game because of Tyler. And so but he also made Will kind of sit back, take a deep breath. And the word that I've used, and Coach Schmitz kind of shook his head when I've said it, is Will has looked relaxed over these last few weeks instead of pressing like he did earlier this season.
Going back to that College Station offense, Peyton Cashin has kind of just been one of the guys that they've gone to. What have you seen from that receiving core in particular, kind of led by him and a guy like Jake Pivoto?
Well, and I think that Jackson Verdugo gets a lot of attention, but he's also a guy that's been inline tight end at times and then go out and play your wide receiver. So you have a lot of versatility. That's one of the things about this team. They can have Stapp, Brown, Peyton Cashin, Verdugo, and Pivoto all on the field at the same time and be in running sets or being passing sets. So they've had flexibility with the same personnel grouping, and I think that's been something that is really benefited from the ability of Arrington Maiden to check out of bad plays, know when the coaches anticipate when the coaches see something defensively. Maybe now that I'm a senior, I'm going to catch on and see that, hey, you're going to check to something I'm expecting. And then he's been efficient throwing the football and mixing it up to everybody. And I think that versatility, especially with the ability of Stapp and Martinez Brown to catch the football out of the backfield, gives them threats. They're averaging 320 yards a game in passing, and it's all of those guys contributing. There isn't one guy with 1,000 yards that you're going to key on. It's the group in total that you have to watch, 5, 6, 7 guys that are coming in and out. Fresh legs certainly leads to explosive offense.
You made a good point about the different formations, but using the same personnel groups. And Consol really hasn't had that opportunity more because of injuries. And, but I still think the person, and you mentioned, Vertigo, but, Colton Schmeller, very similar. H-back, tight end, wide, they'll split him out. Besides kick a 58-yard field goal if needed. Kid's got an incredible leg, made some phenomenal catches last week in the ball game. But the person I hope they can get the ball to the most, I feel like still the most dynamic with the ball, is Keyshawn Thomas. And Keyshawn, they moved from running back out to split, to the slot receiver to try to keep him healthier. And then unfortunately, first game gets banged up. And I've been told, and maybe not heard, I don't know, that they haven't really featured him so much trying to rest him up, and make sure that he was healthy going into this ball game. But anytime Keyshawn touches the ball, it could go the whole way, and he's just dynamic. But Trey Taylor came back off of a 3-game hiatus and was fresh and really hitting the holes real well. But then in the meantime, they've also found Dakota Johnson as their backup. 96-yard run, 275 yards, and this is a kid that hadn't played football in 2 years.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I've only gotten to watch Consol once this season, and that was the game that Dakota he went off. And, I mean, he had himself a night. I mean, one of the leads in my story was that Trey Taylor had a really good night. He almost rushed for 200 yards. And then it was the Dakota Johnson show in the second half. It
was Dakota, but also give that offensive line a lot of credit. So, I think both schools knew coming back that skill positions were set. They had skill. It was the front five that they were concerned with. And then here comes Coach Schmidt coming in with a whole new philosophy, whole new scheme, just new terminology. Because I'm still convinced every team runs the exact same plays. They just call it different names and things. But these kids had to learn it. And then most of those kids hadn't even been on the varsity, not varsity experience, were on JV last year. So getting used to that. And so they had to learn how to do it. And that offensive line has improved. So, and Dakota is really much more of a straight ahead runner, and to show his speed, he was very successful in track. And so I think with what the line's capable of doing, that fits his system, and he's able to go 4 ahead. And he understands if I get 4, I get 4, I get 4. That's 12 yards. That's a first down. Then all of a sudden he breaks off 96. So it's just he doesn't feel like he has to get a home run every time up that he touches the football.
That week I was there, Coach Schmidt said their word of the week was growth. And before the game, had one of the assistants put up all the ways that they had seen the Tigers grow throughout the season. College Station is 5-0 against Consol. Consol is not the favorite going into this game. What do you see as the keys to this game for Consol to be able to win and grow and get over that hump to get there?
The first thing I'd love to say is for both schools, stay off social media. Of course, that's not happening. So, I don't know what's being said this year, but that's somewhat. And so again, just play the football game. Consol, one of my fears is sometimes, especially that defense being aggressive, gets caught up in the extracurricular, extra peripheral, and then all of a sudden they get themselves in trouble. Had a lot of penalties early on, and so take that aggressiveness, keep it, but do it within the ball game. I think the defense needs to just continue to show up, and if they get behind, which is they may, you can't put your head down. What was the score last year? 21-0 Consol at the end of the first quarter, halftime. And so who would have thought that College Station, but College Station, give them all the credit, came back, made the game much more physical. And I don't think, Consol answered that bell. As I always said, if you punched them in the mouth, they may not have always punched back. Well, this year I think they're going to punch back, and I don't mean that literally.
Well, and I think that in the post-game huddle after the game this last week in the victory over Georgetown, Stoney Pryor said, don't write a check with your talk this week that someone else has to cash. So I think that they were focused on that too. This is a huge game. It's a huge game, even if the records were the reverse. If one was 1-5 and the other one was 0-6, this community is excited for it. These players are excited for it. But I think that the way College Station is taking care of their business, they want to keep it on an even keel. Okay, they want to approach it like they did Georgetown, who they lost in the regular season and beat in the playoffs last year. Cedar Park, the better teams in this league, they know that they're getting everybody's best shot, but they've had an even keel. They've stayed away from the silly penalties, and they've let their offense work because they've been able to keep a clean pocket around Maiden. I think that's the key. It's going to be that defensive front trying to get through the Cougar offensive front. And then I'm interested to see, not just for this week, but in the weeks to come, how the Cougars' defensive front goes against these bigger offensive lines, because I think that's the key. They've got a couple guys that are short in stature but really bulky that get by on quicks. And as this season goes along, who's going to be the team that imposes their will offensive line-wise to keep the Cougars off the field, because we're making your defense stay on the field for those long, sustained drives against them. Georgetown did it once last week in the second half, and it had really been since Lovejoy that anybody had a 10, 12-play drive against the Cougars.
I was scoreboard watching a lot the last, couple of weeks, and I thought Cedar Park and College Station was going to be an incredible game, and I'm just watching, wow, that's all I could say. And then even last week, and I still think where the Tigers are now, if they replayed Georgetown, I think there'd be a different outcome. I mean, they had 5 turnovers, 15 penalties, not their best game, but they're not the same team, a short time later. So I think it's going to be a great game. And what Scott said about the records, I mean, go back historically, how many times in the Bryan Consol Crosstown showdown did the team that was never supposed to win ended up win that game?
Exactly. You've got to control the emotions when you're 13 to 18 years old, and that's a hard thing to do and a tough lesson. But I think that one of the things about the Cougars and the runs they've made to state the last 2 years is they played a lot of games. They know they're going to get a lot of people's best shot, and I think that's that growth for all those guys that were on the JV that didn't get a chance, to play a lot of football at A&M Consolidated. Those guys have practiced a lot of playoff football, practiced a lot of, scout against the Cougars to get them ready, and I think that some of those guys that have percolated up through the ranks this year have shown that they have some it wasn't necessarily game knowledge, but they had some Cougar football knowledge, and that's really helped them.
And I think that's an advantage. But they've been in that system now.
Yeah, it didn't change with Stony Brook.
2, 3, 4 years, or if not going down to 7th grade for some of them. I know when my son Cole was at AMCMS, he ran the varsity offense in 7th grade. So when he went to high school, it was the same exact offense, but you had that direct line. It wasn't with the 3 middle schools trying to figure out and everything else like that. But some of these kids, have been in the the College Station High School program and their system for many years.
It's going to be a game Friday night. It's probably going to be pretty. If it's not sold out, it's going to be pretty darn full. What do you guys hope to see just from the crowd maybe on Friday night?
Well, last year I remember it was just a fantastic environment. When you walked into College Station, you almost felt like you were at a college atmosphere. I mean, people were already lined up at the gates. I mean, and I get to the game at 5:00 usually to make sure I get everything set up because technology and me aren't always the best friends. And I mean, people were already lined up and just the the tailgating going on and all that. So it's going to be fun. And you looked across at the College Station and Consol's side was full. And I'm not sure if our visiting side is as big as College Station's.
I
So
think
it's going to be
it's
standing room only. And I haven't heard if they're moving the band and putting them on the field and so they can have those end zone stands or not. I haven't heard any of that yet.
Well, I know that the 2 games that have been played at Tigerland, both of them have had a high atmosphere. My son John was in the stands for both of those games and talked about how exciting it was, how they wanted to be a part of the game and really bring some noise. So I think that both teams are going to get points in the game and positions in the game where even the opposing team is going to have some effect. I think that's one of the good things about the closeness of high school football is when you get a full house on the visitor side, they can make some noise and interrupt some things even for the home team. So I think it's going to be great. It's going to be the exciting game that everybody wants it to be. And it's probably just going to be another one of those, games that we look back 4 or 5 years from now and go, yep, this one carried on that intensity. And those, the fight between these 2 teams have good football teams.
Now, and I don't know if we're headed there. So, Scott, let's just say, because last year we all end up in a 3-way tie, comes down to the points, right?
Yes.
So Stony Pryor took some grief from people at the end of the game, and I was on the Consol radio trying to explain to people he was not trying to run up the score. He had to beat Consol by 14 points to get the number 1 seed.
Yes.
Because I had people texting me during the game, why are they doing this? Why are they trying to run up the score? They've got the game won. And so it could possibly say Consol does have the upset. I don't know what the district cap is. But, there's still a possibility that we end up in a 3-way tie because, if you're Consol, the last thing you want to do is end up tied with Georgetown because then it goes back to head-to-head, and now we're the 3rd-place team.
And we're in that position last year till there were upsets at the end of the year and didn't really think that you were going to see that happen. So, yeah, everything matters. The plus minus is for the coaches to worry about.
No. What else do we have to talk about?
Exactly.
Alex needs a job.
Well, and I think that I made
a C in college math. Okay,
I think these
don't make
teams,
me do more math.
Yeah, I think these teams, are in a position where they've made a run to get to the top of the district standings in a good district. I mean, I know that some of those scores are lopsided for both the Tigers the last 3 weeks and some of these games for the Cougars. I think that this is going to be a game where those scores are down a little bit because both teams are going to play some defense. It's going to be hard hitting on Friday night.
I'm not trying to take over your job, but
No.
I got a question. Sorry.
Do it.
So 2 years ago, Consol makes the state championship, right? Kind of expected. That Jet Hut group and all that. Last year, state final. Certainly didn't. I don't think anybody really expected them to go that deep. Maybe you did. I'm not sure. But where do you think this team is last year compared to that team?
I think this team is better offensively because Arrington Maiden is better. They're better at quarterback this year than they were last year. Their defensive front isn't as big as it was last year, so they're getting by on some quicks. And, if you run into the wrong team, that can certainly, frustrate you. But I also think that all the kids that were there 2 years ago against Pato, where they were an inch away from winning a state title, and the bad taste in their mouth after playing Alito last year, they're carrying that with them. And they are striving each and every week because if they are the district champion, the path will be different. They could play one familiar team, but the path would be different because they'd be on the other side of the bracket.
Right.
Those teams have changed. I think that it's exciting for them, but these kids have a focus to try to make 3 in a row.
And that path could be pretty challenging potentially if they had to play Fulshear and Smithson.
Well,
Valley
I just
again.
think that Magnolia's got a D1 running back going to Utah. That some people are saying the Aggies are looking at maybe to try to flip him to be a linebacker. There's this Region 3 is always what it is. Region 2 was the same way the previous 2 years, but always when the Cougars are in the Region 2 or Region 3. There's going to be some tough football to play in district and then in the playoffs.
It's just a tough region because go back to baseball last year. You had basically, three of the top teams in the state.
Yeah.
The state champion came out of that, but then they had to, any one of those 3 teams could have made a deep run, and somehow College Station doesn't even make it, and they were probably one of the top teams in that district. So it's a tough region, but. You got to win games, and every coach that I've coached with, and I was fortunate enough, and back in my high school career to win a couple, there's luck that gets involved sometimes. But, you talked about Cade Corcoran a little bit and how well Arrington's playing. But, remember last year, he was being brought in at crunch times because Arrington wasn't performing at that time.
And he wasn't healthy, and that's why I think the difference is this year is Arrington has been healthy the whole time. And, when you go from him completing almost 68% of his passes and Corcoran being in the mid-70s, they've been really efficient, and the offense doesn't change for either of them, and that's an experience factor that really has, let this offense be good even when Maiden hadn't played in the fourth quarter.
And so I think you have both schools are comfortable with their quarterback situation at this point, which you can't always say as far as depth. You've got both schools have played both their quarterbacks in big-time situations.
Yeah, I agree 100%. They're winning football games with the quarterbacks that have had to play, and I think that's a comfort level for coaches that a lot of teams around the state don't have.
Well, I think we could talk about this game all afternoon. I don't know about you guys, but y'all are going to get to call the game Friday night. For those who may not be able to go or just want to sit in the stands and hear a little commentary, where can they hear the game on Friday night? Tap?
We're going to be on 1620 WTAW, the mothership, as I like to call it, for Brian Broadcasting, and what a great job they do. But, we're fortunate to be on that same one. People still text me. I go, the same one we've been on for about 20 years now.
And we'll take the country music off Maverick 100.7 for about 3.5 hours and have a lot of high school football. So it's exciting, and I think the community really benefits from the job that we get to do because of the way the coaches and the players really make it easy for us.
Old school, they would switch at halftime, right? One of the announcers would go to the other, but that was
we
Brian.
have never done
and we're
that.
never going to do that,
No,
by the
we're
way.
not.
Man, that would be an interesting plot twist. We'll see if there's any trickeration in the press box on Friday night. But
they're having to sit outside. I've already filled up that.
Okay. It won't be. I've sat outside before.
Yeah, me too. You'll be on the other side too, where the noise is better.
Fair enough. Hey, thanks to these guys for coming in and giving us a little insight into Friday's big showdown. Coming up next, we got there are other games in the Brazos Valley this week, believe it or not. We got all that preview coming up here in our final segment. Hey, big thanks to Scott and Tap for breaking down Cougars Tigers. Definitely going to be a good one. There's still other games to play though. Let's not forget that fact. The Bryan schools, these are big ones for them, right? You got to win if you want to keep those playoff hopes alive. Let's start with Bryan. Okay, they got kind of rolled up by Midway last week, lost by 4 scores, and now they're in a tie for 4th with Hutto. And coincidentally, they're playing each other this week, so it's pretty much a playoff game, right? Andrew, you're going to be at this one. Give us a little insight onto this matchup.
I've been to Bryan practice the past couple weeks. I feel like the vibe has been going up a little bit more, especially this past week that actually went by today. I think the last time I went, I covered a game was the Cove game, which was obviously tons of points, tons of offense. The past couple weeks, the competition's ramped up in ways, and so the success has not been quite as high the last 3 weeks, I guess, since I've been. But this is a big chance with Hutto, and we know Hutto likes to score, and they score a lot.
Yeah, they do.
Quarterback Will Hammond, Tech commit, has a bajillion yards. He was a part of that 80-70 game earlier this year. That was the Hutto game, right? The opener?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they love to score points. I have a feeling it's going to be a track meet. So, I mean, can Bryan keep up? That's that's the big question for me, because I feel like Hutto's can give up quite a bit of points too. Don't get me wrong, but they like to score a lot as well.
Yeah, Hammond's got 3,000 passing yards. He's also got 700 rushing yards.
Yeah.
Dude's got over 40
Can do both.
touchdowns. He can do everything. Alex Green's his go-to wide receiver. He's already got 1,500 receiving yards and 15 touchdowns.
A small nugget that I guess it's kind of cool to me when I looked at it. Alex Green has 6 offers from Ivy League schools, so he is killing it on and off the field. I just wanted to get a quick shout out when I saw that. I'm like,
Go
6
Mr.
Ivy
Green.
League. So yeah.
Go, Mr. Green. Well, hey, was there anything that maybe Coach Tullis said to you that kind of stuck out from your conversation with him?
I wasn't able to speak to him today,
Okay.
but I feel like I got a lot of what they were trying to implement, especially on the defensive side, and different twists and twists and stunts to be able to create pressure. I talked to the D-line coach, and he mentioned some new technique packages that they're trying to use, and then offensively, they were spreading it around. So.
Well, hey, Rudder also in must-win mode, right? The Rangers, they've got to win their last 2 games.
Yeah, they've got to win out at
not
this
just
point.
this week. They got to win next week, too, and they probably actually need a little bit of help to go with it. This week, though, it's Richmond-Randall, which got the best of Rudder last year in a pretty lopsided win. Randall's going to be a tough team to beat, right? They're 7-1. Their lone loss is to Lake Creek. Hey, Landon Callis-Williams.
Yeah,
Going to be
freshman,
a name
right?
to remember. He's a freshman with over 1,000 yards, 12 touchdowns. He's already got offers from several schools, including A&M and Georgia, so he's doing all right in that department. Yeah. And they got a sophomore quarterback, Tyler Skrabonic, with like 1,500 yards and 22 touchdowns. Jake, what's it going to take for the Rangers to try and pull off an upset this week against Randall? That's a pretty heavy favorite.
Man, well, I think the biggest thing for me, and I wasn't at the game, but we got to see Luke White, one of our Eagle stringer freelance writers. He was at the game, and I read his story afterwards. And I think the biggest positive sign for me, at least for Rudder, was they kind of seemed to fix the offensive issues a little bit. Put up 24 points against Brenham last week. That's a positive sign. I think if they can kind of keep that offense momentum going, I know the defense kind of but we know how talented Jacoby Dixon is. I think he had over 400
Another name
yards.
to remember.
Yeah, the Brenham freshman running back. I know he had a big game, but I think if Rudder can kind of, they had the offense kind of figured out. It seemed like last week with the 24 points, especially coming off, I think, the week before that, it was 2 games in a row where they just put up 3 points in Huntsville and Lake Creek. So they seem to get the offense figured out. I think if they can get that defense back on track, they should be able to hang with Randall. I mean, because like you said, they know they've got to win. So I think this is going to be a week where they go into practice, they hit it hard. If both sides of the ball can kind of match the play we saw a little earlier in the year, like against Lamar Consolidated, I think they've got a shot. It's not going to be easy, of course, especially on the road. But they're at home this week because Brian's on the road. So yeah, they'll be at home. That'll be a bonus. But yeah, if they can get both sides of the ball to kind of be on the same level, they got a shot.
Hey, I need you to go and count how many hippo statues are in Hutto, okay?
I can do that. No, going back to the Rudder game, and you mentioned the Bryan game almost feels like a playoff game. This kind of feels like Rudder's own playoff game, right? Because the week after this, they have Montgomery, which should be a win. It should be a win. But this game on Friday, this is basically if you lose, you're done. And if you win, you've got a very good chance of sliding in. So
yeah. Well, hey, one of the big news deals from last Friday was Franklin's 39-game win streak was snapped by Lorena. I was out there, got to witness the upset firsthand. The Lions fell to number 8 in the 3A Division I poll. They got Cameron Yo this week. Yo coming off that kind of lopsided loss to Rockdale in the Battle of the Bell.
Yep.
I thought that was going to be a lot closer, by the way. I actually picked Cameron to win.
We all did, I think.
Did we really? Did you pick Cameron to win?
I swear I picked Rockdale, but
Did
I'm
you?
not 100%
Hey, good for
sure.
you.
I'm not 100% sure. I had a bad
Never mind
week.
then.
Jake and
My
I
fault.
picked Cameron. Jake, you slipped a couple spots in the
Did I?
pick. Yeah. Well, I mean,
I didn't go. Well, it's hard to follow up with 25-0.
That is very true.
Yeah.
Like I said from the beginning, I said broken clock right twice a day, folks. Like I don't.
It wasn't right again.
Well, I'm definitely curious to see how the Lions will respond this week. They beat Cameron Yo like 63-7 last year.
Mm-hmm.
If they win and did that again, I would not necessarily be surprised. Coach Fannin was pretty fired up with his team after the game, and he basically said, "Look, you got two options. You can either, slouch and feel sorry for yourself, or you can bow up your neck and go and get it fixed and get it done." And kind of knowing how Franklin operates and plays, I tend to lean toward they're probably going to bow their necks.
Yeah.
But that's got to be hard for them to, they're just so accustomed to winning. Losing is just so unnatural over there right now. So
I mean, heck, in a weird way, I don't know. There's a part of me that's kind of like, maybe this was a good thing, maybe the pressure of the streak, as it starts getting higher and higher, you probably feel a lot more outside pressure. Now they're just kind of now they just can go back to just, okay, let's start a new one.
I asked him about that. I was like, does this relieve any sort of maybe unspoken pressure? And he was like, no, we never talked about it. And I mean, I don't know. It could just be coach speak. It could just be Coach Fannin's a pretty honest dude, so I kind of just take him at his word there. But yeah, I mean, and this is gonna sound crazy, but I'm pretty sure their playoff road might be easier now because of where they might land on what side of the bracket.
Yeah,
I haven't looked at it yet, but if they had won that game, they were gonna win the district. And they were probably going to have to play Columbus in the third round, maybe, not the fourth. Ooh. And so, I mean, playoff games are playoff games, but there's a difference between playing just another playoff team and playing the number one team in 3A who, they had to rally and beat last year to make it to the state semifinals.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow, I hadn't thought about that in round 3.
Yeah.
That's
so
early.
I mean, we'll have to see how it all shakes out, of course, but it could work out okay for Franklin. Here's the deal. They've definitely got the team and the talent and the experience to make another run. This one loss does not derail their entire season.
Yeah, no, not at all.
So, well, hey, let's talk about 3 games to watch. Let's start with Madisonville. They're at Waco Connolly this week. This is pretty much a de facto district championship game in 11 4A1. What's up with District 11 in our areas? We got the 5A 11, 4A 11, and 3A 11 that are all just kind of bonkers. So, But hey, Connolly gave it to the Mustangs last year. They won 61-14. Cadets are pretty stacked, right? They got Kobe Black, 5-star, 2-way player. Kiefer Sibley's got 1,600 yards, 21 touchdowns. I'm kind of looking forward to hearing about how the Lorenzo Johnson versus Kobe Black matchup went. Last week I saw Devin Hadrago against Jaden Porter, who's committed to Baylor. That was a fun matchup. You got 5-star versus Tech commit. Definitely curious to see if Ty Williams can get it to their stud playmaker a few times.
Hey, he did last week.
Yeah, he did.
6 catches, 155 yards, and 1 touchdown. So pretty good recipe for success there against Gatesville.
And I was there for the first half of this year. I covered a little bit of stuff in the Waco area, and Sibley his numbers duplicate what he looks like on the field. He's a stud on a team that obviously has Kobe Black. That's the main headliner, but Sibley cannot go unnoticed.
I saw Madisonville was favored by 3, and honestly, I was a little surprised when I saw that at first because, I mean, Connolly has what? Do they have 2 losses?
They have 3.
They have 3.
But they played some tough teams,
They played some good they lost to Brownwood. They lost to did they lose to La Vega?
I think they lost to La Vega by 3.
They lost to La Vega, and they lost to somebody else that was pretty good too.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not record aside, it's not necessarily indicative of the team that they are.
Right.
So, up next, Brenham at Huntsville. Okay, Brenham, of course, they got the big win over Rudder last week. That secured a playoff spot for the Cubs, and now they're playing for seeding, right? They got Huntsville this week. Both teams are 3-1. If they win this, they'll get another crack at Lake Creek for the district championship. Remember, they got into that game last year. They could have won.
Yeah, it was a close one. Yeah.
And Lake Creek kind of pulled away late. So you don't want to look ahead, but you got to know in the back of your mind, hey, if we win this game, we're really playing for something this next week.
Which is impressive, especially since they had lost to Randall. But since that loss, they haven't lost. They've won 3 games in a row.
Yeah.
And they're 3-1, right back on the right track.
There's kind of a log jam there. in that district with Huntsville, Brenham, and Randall. And now that I'm thinking about it, if Brenham won the next 2 games, wouldn't there be a 3-way tie for that district between Randall, Lake Creek, and Brenham if they all finished with 1 loss?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Chaotic.
So guess we'll see how that shakes out.
Credit to Huntsville. They hung tough with Lake Creek last week. I want to say they were tied going into the 4-4.
Yeah,
real late.
Huntsville gave them about all they could handle.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, man. I don't see anybody beating Lake Creek right now. They're really freaking
They
good.
looked real good against Rudder, that's for sure. I was at that one.
All right, last game on here. We got Snook at Yorktown. Blue Jays are in a must-win situation. If they beat Yorktown, this is similar to Rudder, right? They got to win their last 2 games.
Yeah.
So if they beat Yorktown, they'll play Luis next week for a playoff spot. And this also impacts Somerville. The Yawas, they need Yorktown to lose so they don't catch them in a tie. Yorktown has the head-to-head over them for 4th place. Somerville closes out with Burton and Falls City.
That's tough.
That's tough.
That's your district
tough.
leaders right there.
That's your 2 district leaders. That's going to be hard for the Yawas to pull off an upset. But I'm definitely curious how Snook can. I think Yorktown's like a 10-point favorite in this one.
I think so, yeah.
So, and I think our
Behind
screen
you.
just went off.
Yeah.
So I think that's telling us we're about out of time. But hey, any final thoughts on any of these games?
No, I mean, I'm interested in that Snook Yorktown one, and I'll be curious, too, if any Somerville fans maybe make the trip, maybe a little scouting like the Michigan
It seems like
situation.
Just don't get caught.
Yeah, exactly.
it seems like every game or a level of every game, there's at least one game at each level that is that has big implications on a district or a playoff spot. And hey, it's week 10. You can't get better than that.
Hey, to your point on that, at least at the high school level, you pretty much just walk up to the gate and pay in cash.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
No paper
Venmo.
trail. No paper trail. Well, hey, thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the Brazos Sports Preps Cast. Be sure to follow all of our coverage at theeagle.com. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.